Yeah, it was the Wild West.
Yeah. Well, it's one of the reasons why Texas is such a crazy place. It's like this was kind of the last stand.
Yeah, and Texas was its own nation for 14
Yeah.
years, 13 years, and it's still that independence is still pretty embedded in it.
Yeah, they want to put it back on the ballot to
Every
secede.
year. I mean, it just decimated. I think cholera killed 60% of the Comanche.
Yeah, they said that 90% of the people killed in North America were killed by diseases. 90% of the Native Americans.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that story hasn't been told properly, and that's what I really appreciated about 1883. It's like you talked about. I mean, this was like the end of the Native American Empire, essentially. This was when there was still a little bit of buffalo left. There was still, they were moving Indians to reservations. Then the Indians that were out, they were resisting it, and it's just, and then these people are trying to make their way in this fucking wagon train across the country. What percentage of those people died that were trying to do that?
I mean, I don't know that there's anywhere along the Oregon Trail you can drive along, or there's markers just everywhere, and especially the further up you get into Wyoming, and the further you start getting through like the Lander Cutoff and South Pass, then they're just, and that's the ones that that got a marker.
Yeah.
So it's, how do you know?
Right.
The handcart, the Mormon Church brought a lot of people out, and they didn't have a lot of money, enough money to give them full wagons, even though that's what they'd promised. So they made these handcarts that people would pull from wherever they took off from, somewhere in Ohio, to try and get to Utah. And so these people pulled them by hand. They'd put their wife and their gear, their kids or whatever, and then they'd pull them, these two-wheeled carts, like chariots without a horse. And, one winter, they left too late and got caught in the winter. And the whole trick was, if you didn't make it to this certain spot in Wyoming by July 4th, you were not going to make it. You were going to get caught in the pass and you're going to die. And something like 25,000 people died in 1 year. Just mind-numbing statistics.
Insane.
Yeah.
Insane. And it's so interesting that the early films on the West, they never covered that. The early films on the West were like these really sort of shallow surface films that were fun movies, cowboys versus Indians, the spaghetti westerns and that kind of stuff. But no one had any sort of real understanding of what actually went down.
No, you didn't. The notion of getting free land that you could go farm with, by the way, nothing. You're going to go somewhere with nothing. Like, there's no stores. You're going to have to make everything. You have to figure it all out on your own. Who would choose that? Not a successful blacksmith. Not somebody that's got a nice, comfortable home in Maryland or wherever. And why? Why would you do that? You have to have no other option.
Right.
Right. All the people that came over from whatever European nation they came from, they didn't come for an adventure.
Right.
They came because they were fucking starving. My family came over from Ireland because of the potato famine. They didn't want to. They had to.
Right.
They were dying. So they had to come. So that's why everyone came. Desperation. Like, desperation is what settled the West. Fueled by a manifest destiny, which was a cruel, very cruel, insidious idea that a bunch of politicians had that says, hey, we can either send the army out there and just go to war. And we've been doing that, and we've been getting the shit handed to us because the Lakota were, until the repeating rifle came around, the Lakota and the Comanche, the Arapaho, even the South, we did not have their skill level on a horse. Their arrows were actually more effective than our single-shot muskets. Like, they were a superior army. And stayed that way. It wasn't until we started sacking villages when the Braves were gone, when their soldiers were gone, when that dirty shit started, then it started turning the tide. And then when we killed the food source, that was the end of it.
Yeah, which is part of the wiping out of the buffalo.
Yep.
I mean, it was a commodity for sure, but it was also, there was a concerted effort to cut off their food source.
But it was also, there was a demand. The buffalo tongue was the number one delicacy in New York City.
Isn't that crazy?
The tongue.
Which nobody wants anymore.
No. And then they sold all the buffalo skins to France, and they made giant, massive, silly robes.
Well, at one point in time, one of the richest men in the world was he dealt in beaver pelts.
Yeah, I don't doubt it.
There was fucking beaver everywhere. They wiped out most of the beaver in this country.
Yeah. But they've come back.
Yeah, they've come back,
Yeah.
but not nearly to where they were.
No, but they've come back. It's pretty. It's pretty impressive how much they've come back.